Hello and welcome to Blurry Photos. I am David Flora.
And I am David Stecco.
Hope you're doing well and welcome to the podcast. I don't know where that came from.
That's what it's going to be all night.
Great. So for this episode, we're going to talk about witches and witchcraft.
That's right. There is nothing more specifically Halloween-y than witches, their craft, the accoutrements surrounding witch. I would say that the witch is the backbone of the Halloween season. It does the heavy lifting.
I'll fall in line with that. I'm fine with that. And we're doing this again for Blanktober.
Yeah.
And if you have a suggestion for what to fill in that blank, maybe something that's punny.
Yeah.
Or something that just makes sense.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Please send it to us.
We'll crown a king or queen of Halloween. Whoever comes up with something to fix it. We will declare you to be Halloween royalty.
And not like the Jack Skellington king of Halloween. Was he king, or was he just hero of
He was
Halloween
just like
town?
Outstanding member of the community. He wasn't even the mayor.
Right.
So
because that mayor had more than one face, right?
Yep, may or may not. That was his name.
That's great. That's great.
They're pretty good.
That's pretty good. I haven't seen that in a long time. I'll have to rewatch that.
'Tis the season.
It is indeed, and we're drawing nigh to Hallowmas.
Oh yes, sweet Hallowmas.
How's your costume coming along?
Good. I had a rivet setback, which is a common occurrence, but undaunted, I've gone forward with number 6 machine screws.
Wow.
Yeah. So
if I knew what that meant, I might be more impressed.
I know. That's how you know I'm not lying. The specificity sells it.
So today, with the witchcraft and the witches, we hope to enlighten you about the history of witches and witchcraft.
And I mean, this is witches. We're handling the Himalayan mountain range of the occult here. So like. We're just going to give you the basic, the broad strokes of it. We're going to get into some items of current, witches of now versus witches of yore.
True. The subject of witches is huge. I mean, we could sit here and talk all night about witches and witchcraft and all the goodies about it, and get into real specific things. But we think you look great, and you're better than that.
Mm-hmm.
So
we respect you too much to do that to you.
We're not going to waste your time with boring you on super details. We're just going to give you the juiciest cuts of meat.
Yeah. You stole it right out of my head. I was the tenderest cuts of lore. Well played, Flora.
I'll try. We'll try to hit on some of the specifics and some good things. But again, we're not going to keep you, which I think we're doing right now. So let's go on and jump into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Witchcraft, simply put, it's just the use of supposed supernatural and magical powers or spells. There is a stigma, I guess, now about witchcraft being something that is inherently bad. And it was not always the case, that witches were bad or witchcraft was bad. We'll get into when and how that changed throughout history, but in general, witches are pretty prevalent in most cultures throughout the world, and the histories of those cultures, and not just today.
It's fascinating when you look at the history of witches that you almost want to laugh, because there's so much to learn, that there are really specific definitions of what constitutes a witch versus a sorcerer.
Yep.
Those are two completely different groups of people.
True.
And here I have been putting them all in the same bucket.
Well, I'll tell you, the thing that I've been doing is putting... I've always heard, a witch is a female practitioner of magic. A warlock is a male practitioner of magic. So that you don't have male witches, But in researching this stuff, it seems like that's not the case. For much of history, it's mostly just the term witch can be applied to male or female.
And where does wizard fit into that, then? The difference between a wizard and a warlock and a sorcerer?
Well, if you play D&D, then you have a head start on the difference there.
I do not, sir.
I have.
I'm very... these differences they matter, as far as the history, as far as people who study the anthropology of this.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. And as I said, in most cultures, there is a witch or a witch-type figure present, though not always called witch. Like you said, you have wizards, sorcerers, there are shamans, blessers, even a popular thing, I think, in Europe, people were called cunning man. The cunning man put a spell on you or healed or
I've never heard of a cunning man.
Cunning man, yeah.
And I've also never heard of a blesser.
A blesser?
Look out! Blesser's coming!
Look out! Blesser's coming! Blesser. It kind of sounds like the guy from Pet Sematary.
Yeah!
Blesser's coming! Don't cross the road now.
You're gonna get blessed.
You're gonna get blessed.
Yeah,
Don't go down on Pet Cemetery. Yeah.
I've never heard of a blesser.
Blesser.
I hope that they have lisps.
It's almost a character from Harry Potter, I think, or something that he uses.
I think that absolutely everything we're going to discuss has some reference in Harry Potter.
Sticks some body part in the Harry Potter
where
bucket.
there's no way we're getting out of that. So Harry Potter.
Okay,
now we're done.
Like I said before, they weren't exclusively negative to be called a witch or to practice healing. Mostly was what many of these people did throughout history, and they were pretty well liked in their communities. Mostly because they knew how to cure the sick and treat the old tummy ache, and just commune with nature, be a nice
there's
force.
A huge amount of actual, for lack of a better term, scientific knowledge that these people had about roots and herbs and basic first aid. Mm-hmm. And people brought their their kids to these people.
Right.
It wasn't always this bubbling, miserable cauldron of fury and cats and familiars and things like that. I mean, these were like the local healers. This is where you went if something went wrong. You didn't go to the priest. You didn't go to church to pray it away.
Some of them did.
Well, those people took themselves out of the equation quite quickly, I'd imagine.
So what you mentioned before, with it not being scientific, that's sort of why the witch has this supernatural connotation, is because people couldn't explain it. So then it must be magic, right? They didn't have the science to be able to explain why things happened or why somebody got better after the cunning man gave them a ginger root drink to settle their stomach. So they just they made a potion, and it was magical, and that's what cured them, even though it all just boils down to what happens when you put some ginger in your stomach.
Yeah.
So they weren't always bad guys. They weren't always demonized.
When did we turn a corner on that?
Well, we turned it a while ago. It's not a very recent corner that's to be turned, but witchcraft also has been said to be practices that influence the mind and the body or the property of others against their will, or to be actions that deliberately go against a social or religious order. So that's sort of where you can start seeing the roots of where the corner is turned. When you start going up against the ideas of a religion that's taken over, you're going to come up against some resistance.
Yeah, once people start being afraid that you're mind taking, there's going to be some resistance there.
Yeah, and the belief that witchcraft is bad, even somewhat to this day, may be specifically a Christian construct. Now, it's not necessarily in stone that because Christianity's influence demonized witchcraft, that's why it has this hugely bad connotation. But that certainly helped it throughout the ages become this demonized thing.
Well, and the Christian expansion, the way that the Catholic Church utilizes new areas to take over, when they expand, that they incorporate local belief systems and then kind of take their time and sort of subvert them then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think you could see that pattern with local healers, like you said, shaman.
Yep.
Even Mother Matilda. Maybe no one ever just calls her a witch or anything. That's just Mother Matilda. Right. She lives over there. And if you need foxglove or digitalis, you go see her.
Right. And that's sort of what we touched on with the history of Halloween episode, with how the church sort of sucked up Samhain, and then they were like, oh, by the way, here's All Saints Day right after it, so don't worry about celebrating that pagan celebration.
They treated it like fall sweeps, like, oh, well, we took. I understand that your Samhain is Thursdays at 7, but we've got new episodes of The West Wing for you to watch.
So yeah, you're right. They kind of got sucked up into the machine and then just turned into another cog, basically. And if they resisted at all, then they were in league with the devil, and they had to be destroyed.
The Old Testament's pretty clear on how you handle that.
What is it? Suffer no witch to live is in there in the Old Testament. Also in the Old Testament, which is pretty cool. I thought I hadn't heard of this before, but King Saul consults a witch by the name of the Witch of Endor about an upcoming battle. Could it be the battle against the Empire?
Yes. King Saul noticed that there was a second. I mean, it was too big to be a battle station. I mean, it had to be a moon, right?
Had to be a moon. That's no moon.
Exactly. Oh!
That's a fully operation.
And that's what happened to Mesopotamia.
Incurred the wrath of the Empire.
That's right.
The battle against the stormtroopers.
Nailed it.
All right. So this happens in 1 Samuel chapter 28, verses 3 through 25.
For those of you,
yeah, if you're following along in the old Bible, which you should have for every episode of.
Always have a Bible out before you push play.
The witch of Endor used necromancy.
Whoa!
Which is the conjuring of spirits of the dead for divination or prophecy.
That's definitely in the bad witch bucket.
To call up the ghost of the prophet Samuel to let King Saul know how that battle is going to turn out. Spoiler alert, it turns out poorly. He dies.
Did he know that ahead of time?
Did he know that he was going to die?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he was there when the spirit of Samuel comes up and it's like, dude, you pissed off God, you're going to die tomorrow. So, bye! Yeah.
See ya!
See you soon!
Yeah, exactly.
He knew it. I guess he went anyway, so...
Now, see, why? Why would you go find the Witch of Endor, ask her to dig up the ghost of a prophet, and then not listen to the ghost of the prophet?
Yeah, exactly. And then you get into the argument of, well, is it fate? Or do people have a choice? I don't know.
And you know what?
I get into that argument. I don't know.
Saul's so irritating that he doesn't even give you the opportunity to go down that. Oh, does he run across his fate on his path to avoid it? No. He just hears if you go do this, you're going to die. He's like, all right, well, what do you know? You're a ghost.
I guess.
I'm going to go do it.
Yeah, I mean,
if he didn't do it, would he have lived? We'll never know.
The stuff that I read, I didn't see his reaction to what the ghost said.
It wasn't a post-game review.
I can only assume that he was like, "F you, ghost. I'm gonna fight my own war." I don't know why he's a gangster.
It died too long ago. See. This is my war, my action. I'm going to do it my way.
I'm gonna protect this rum. See.
Now, out of my way, Witch of Endor. I got a clean house.
King Saul, you never call me anymore. Wait,
everything about that was awful and great at the same time.
When are we gonna do dancing, Saul? Shut up, you flapper witch.
That's how. That's the Bible we should have. The Boardwalk Empire Bible.
So let's talk about the name witch, as we know it. The term witch comes from the Old English Wicca, which I've heard a number of meanings for the word Wicca, from craft of the wise, or
yeah, and you
to a man who practices magic. I mean, who knows? And you
get it's easy to get confused because the current belief system of Wicca takes its name from witchcraft again. So,
right.
So just in case you were confused by this, the current like the people that you see in drum circles and at Renaissance fairs, which are awesome, those folks fairly new on the scene. We're going to get to that.
Yeah.
But witchcraft, as far as like the word Wicca, is very, very old. the belief system known as Wicca is very, very new.
Right.
We'll get into that, but just to alleviate any confusion.
Yeah. I mean, witches were more often than not outcasts or kind of the weirdos of a town or village. They were commonly just the disheveled woman that is walking around barefoot, being loud, proclaiming this and that, or sometimes not loud. I can't prove that at all, but
but the thing is, it's an interesting thing though, because it's usually a sort of an outcast person. Are they raised with this knowledge base about woodscraft and herbs and remedies and how you cure fevers and things like this, with a huge amount of other extra, not necessarily necessary additions, but with spirits and fairies and ghosts and all these things incorporated into it? Now, were these people selected? I mean, because it takes a long time to learn these skills. So were they selected young and brought in over time, or as they grew up, they're like, oh, well, you got a weird one on your hands there. That's how that's going to go.
I don't know. That's a good question.
And because it's such a hyper-regionalized thing, maybe one village's witch is just a crazy woman.
Yeah.
Or a crazy guy who lives out, he's just a hermit at the edge of town and rants and raves. But, you go a mile away, and this village is like, oh no, our witch is this lady, and she was able to save our baby.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a thing. Since every culture and town is a little unique snowflake, then you get all kinds, but they all just basically boil down to the same base thing.
Yeah.
Which is it's just somebody who can help, or they know, like you said, woodscraft and herbalism, things like that, stuff that other people don't know, and because they don't know, they fear it in a way.
Yeah. Oh, I imagine everyone's terrified of the witches.
Yeah. During medieval Europe, this is when you start seeing the rise of some of the worst aspects that's associated with witchcraft and witches. The Catholics, the Protestants, other secular religious leaders of the day helped vilify witches, and they basically sparked a period of fear and violence that lasted for centuries. I mean, this is going from...
At least 600 years ago.
This is going from the 14th century to the 18th century. Mm-hmm. And in some cultures, it still goes on today.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You still see headlines about people are killed for witchcraft in parts of the world. People, I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, that has not ended.
And the way they helped vilify witchcraft was kind of doing a stereotype of what a witch was. Generally, was a woman, old, broken down, crony, maybe a little disfigured, warts, things like that. Just somebody that wasn't pleasant to look at. Again, disheveled, like I said before, things like that. Someone who knew something that you might not know, and it seemed like magic. And then they go even further to say that witches consorted with the devil, and anything bad that might have happened was blamed on a witch, because especially if it couldn't be explained. Maybe the crops failed in a particular year. Mm-hmm. Maybe a cow died after somebody got mad and had a spat and then just cursed the cow or cursed the family or something.
Yeah, it's a spell.
It's a spell, and that person was then tried as a witch. So they really fashioned kind of the stereotypical witch image that we have today, with the old crone consorting with the devil, things like that. And
was that used primarily as it was a political weapon.
Yeah,
it was a way for the local church in a region to focus power. Mm-hmm. They could eliminate people who were, if my job is to save souls and to bring in money and people, and something goes wrong and they're going to see this woman at the edge of town or this man at the edge of town, if I can get that person out of the picture, I mean it's a political maneuver.
Yeah,
and it was broadly employed.
And the thing that helped them was it was cross-class hatred. Everybody from the aristocracy all the way down to the peasants living on what they could scrape by with hated witches and knew that, if they suffer a witch to live, then it could cost them their soul.
Right. And so that you get this black market in witches.
Witch hunters and...
Yeah, I mean, because these people still have these skills, and as much as people will pray, in church on Sundays, they're the ones working in the fields. Mm-hmm. And when one of their hands stops working, they will still seek out a person with that medical ability. So these witches don't cease to exist.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I would imagine that most of the people who were accused of witchcraft weren't even these people in the village. They weren't the people who were the village witch, for lack of a better term.
It comes to that, for sure. And that's the worst part. That's the height of what happens to with the persecution of witches. In 1486, a clergyman named Heinrich Kramer wrote a little book called the Malleus Maleficarum, which was a witch hunting manual for people. It basically gave easy to understand instructions on how to identify a witch, putting a witch on trial, the punishment of the witch, and how to set the VCR clock, which in turn made him a witch, and he was killed for it.
And now we're witches because we know of them. Burn us. Send us an email. Burn us. Just a gif of a fire. That'll do.
Oh, that's so awful. But this manual, Malleus Maleficarum, by the way, means hammer of the witches.
Nice.
And it's not hammer of the witches, like, oh, witches have this awesome hammer, man. No. They're like Thor. It's like...
It's the hammer that is used upon witches.
Exactly.
It's like saying the hammer for nails.
Yeah. This book, while it wasn't officially accepted by churches, it was used by religious officials for centuries, basically, and people used it. It was number two most popular book besides Ye Olde Bible, which you're looking at right now.
This is it's a companion guide. It's part of the expanded Bible universe. Not necessarily canon, but
you had to pre-order your Bible to get Malleus Maleficarum.
But you know what? When you read the Bible, you're going to be at the end like, now how do I go about hunting witches?
Yeah.
Good news, people. Good news, everybody.
Part of the vilification of witches in these villages and things was taking was telling people what tools they used. Some of the things to look out for besides the wart and the crony, the old crone look in general. One of which, our friend the broomstick.
Yep.
Broomsticks were popular for witches, especially you hear for them to fly on. Now, they would use broomsticks to fly to their midnight Sabbaths with the devil, because it was, the fastest way to get there, and they could fly. Why not? Also, the broom may have swept away their tracks in the sky.
Sky tracks.
There you go.
Now, I've actually, there was recently a series of articles that I read that were really interesting about the idea of a witch and where we get, how does society arrive at this universal kind of idea of a witch?
Sure. And
one of the articles I read was about the broom and the flying broom and where that whole idea came from. And there was these anthropologists in England were kind of tracing it back. And their theory is this, and it's fascinating and weird. Mm-hmm. The cauldron, that there was people who would mix hallucinogens. Mm-hmm. They learned how to home brew hallucinogens. They would take these hallucinogens, the women, vaginally.
Yeah.
They would apply it.
They apply it on their skin and vaginally.
They would actually, in order to administer it, they would actually apply it to an item. In some cases, a broomstick. Insert said item.
Wow.
I cannot emphasize how weird this is to me. Like reading this article, but then they would go on flights. They would
right.
And so there was
in their minds.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, at no point did anyone fly.
Right.
But they were saying this is where you get that cauldron broomstick flight.
Neat.
That these people would join together, these covens. They would have these late night parties where they would cauldron up a batch of hallucinogen and take it and then just trip balls all night.
Wow. Neat.
So, yeah.
That's neat. And the thing is, and the cauldron, again, is another tool of a witch. The thing is, with these are household items. These are things that housewives had. These are things that most women had access to and used on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. So it's only natural, but because the majority of witches that were accused of being witches were female, these naturally fall into place. I've even heard pitchforks were used in place of brooms, things like that too.
And it's one of those things that you see historically over and over whenever you have a list. Oh, these are the things that this group of people that we're trying to suppress have in common.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, it's things that everyone has.
Oh yeah.
But they're like, oh look, he's got it. It's like, oh, you know what? We're trying to suppress people who like televisions. And we broke this guy's door in, and sure enough, a TV
television right there
got him. I mean, our TVs are different than his. He had the bad kind of, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's one of those
right.
things. Whenever one group of people is trying to persecute another, it's easiest to pick a commonly found item.
Yep.
And then you're going to find what you're looking for. That's how you do it.
And another thing that is a common thing with people across the board, domestic animals.
Yep.
And this is where we get the cat, the black cat.
Mm-hmm.
That was a witch's familiar. It
Yeah.
was just a minion to do her bidding. Also, she could shapeshift into a cat, so a cat may itself be a witch. Who knows?
Which further, I think, highlights how ridiculous this is.
Mm-hmm.
Because no cat will ever do what a human wants. Ever. 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 That's how you know it's a ridiculous thing.
Right. There were other examples of familiars as well.
Oh, thank God.
It could be anywhere from a dog to an owl to a horse. Pretty much any halfway domesticated animal or
if
something.
you see them and an animal within an hour, that's
Yeah.
how you're going to nail them.
That's it. And then the things like wands, candles, complicated knots, herbs, bones. I mean, almost anything could be traced as an implement that a witch could use.
That article that I read also mentioned the wand.
The wand, yeah.
Without going back into that, I just had to get that part out. But yeah,
sure. Old-timey sexual devices.
Yes. If you're having fun, then you're worshiping the devil.
I should also mention the conical hat, which there's not a very clear origin of the conical hat. That type of hat, or a conical hat in general, is seen in many cultures in one shape or another. They think maybe it could be from an ancient depiction of the goddess Diana from a coin that they found in Italy, wearing a conical hat. And Diana was one of the I think goddesses that influenced witchcraft a lot in the old ancient days, or it could be a dunce cap. If they want to vilify witches, well, they're stupid, so put them in dunce caps.
Has history ever made a conical hat that was considered to be good for the person wearing it?
The Chinese, I think.
They did.
The rice paddy hats that they wear, to protect them from
But
the
those
sun.
are like broad cones.
It's
I'm
true,
talking about
yeah.
serious point. Maybe, there's a geometry to that, but because between dunce caps, witches' hats, clan hoods, send us an email if you know of an excellent historical pointy hat.
Yeah. Something that's actually useful or there's a reason that it is pointy.
Asterisk, Pope hats don't count.
I wouldn't file them under that though, because they're
weird. They're weird, and that's a perspective thing. You like the Pope, you don't like the Pope. Let's just take him off the table. That's why I'm saying it.
Pope's off the table. Pope's off the table.
Pope's off the table. Hello.
Pope's off the table.
The Pope's off the table. Foley work by Dave Stecco.
Thunder sound. Yeah. Did you like that thunder sound in the Tesla episode?
I love the thunder sound. The thunder sound is one of my favorites because it'll get you.
It'll get you.
You think everything's all cool, and then boom.
Then we sneak it in there.
Yeah. Because you know what? As a matter of fact, while I was listening, thunder sound. Oh, see?
Yeah. You can't be ready for this.
Hope you weren't driving. Witches.
Back to witches. I should stop laughing now because I'm going to talk about some pretty horrible stuff.
Things are about to get real serious.
Here we go, you guys. We get into the height of the witch scare, the fear and the ignorance of witches. It's a time at the end of the 1600s, beginning of the 1700s, mostly in Europe, although it spreads everywhere, including America, the American colonies. This is called the Burning Times, and it's just when witch hunts just exploded all over the place. People were going crazy trying to find witches and get rid of them. It was influenced, I think, a lot by the Spanish Inquisition and you know how they searched for heretics and things like that, and you know, and their methods of torture and stuff kind of bled over into witch hunts. They would accuse a witch or someone of practicing witchcraft, and they couldn't, by law, they couldn't kill them just because they were accused of witchcraft. The person actually had to confess to being a witch, and then they were killed. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, there's a pretty astoundingly terrifying but to this.
Right. They tortured victims. They tortured them horribly until they either confessed, in which case they were killed, or they died from being tortured to death. Right. It's the biggest damned if you do, damned if you don't out there.
There's no one gets away from being accused of being accused is the sentence.
Right.
You know, and one of the classic witch tests, throw a witch in a lake.
Yep.
If she floats, she's
a witch, and then you kill her.
If she sinks,
not a witch, and she dies.
Yeah.
So terrible. What I want to know is, well, how did they go about their daily lives after that? Are they just like, oh, well, wasn't a witch, my bad. You with the pointy nose.
Yeah.
Is that what they did? Or are they just like, well, let's ask God to forgive us for killing this person and keep hunting witches?
Right. Well, I think that you were doing God's work. And if that person was supposed to live, there would have been an intervention. Something would have happened, lightning bolts.
Good point.
You know, and I think that these things
was God's will.
Like even in the colloquial witch hunt, it's a mob mentality. There's no individual person really arbiting when these things are happening. It's people who are whipped into a frenzy by fear, just by the heat of the moment, to doing terrible things. Yeah. And then afterwards, I think that like any mob, it's always someone else in the mob who did it.
Yeah.
You know,
you can't pin it on one. Yeah.
And so all these people go about their lives maybe a little quietly for a few weeks until the crops fail again, and there's a stranger in town. You know, those awful situations that replay themselves infinitely into humanity's future.
Yeah. Yeah. Sadly enough.
Yeah, we will continue to live out that cycle, just with different variations of what scares us.
The one interesting thing I found, though, is in the early 1600s, England actually did have a witch hunter general, or a witch hunter appointed to oversee finding and killing of witches.
The chief of witch hunting?
Yeah, look up the name Matthew Hopkins.
Okay.
Or is it more?
Witch finder general.
Witch finder general. So Matthew Hopkins, I think this was an actual thing that was appointed by the king or queen.
That's amazing.
So he had the singular job of doing that, but I'm sure he incited mob mentality to help. Yeah,
because you're not going to keep the job of witch finder general if you're not finding witches. which what a terrible situation, because if I found myself in a time portal back then and someone said, hey, do you want the job of witch finder general? I'd be like, that sounds like an awesome job. That's the coolest job title on earth.
I think so.
But actually your job is just to torture and kill innocent people.
Horrible. Oh, the worst.
And all the while, I mean, these people are whistling because they're doing God's work.
That's right. And this lasts, the Burning Times in particular lasts, it was like 200 years long. And it got to be the worst in France and Germany. Germany, there's stories just of towns that almost wipe themselves out because everybody's accusing everybody of being witched, and they killed men, women, and children for this stuff. And they estimate, I mean, you can't know for sure, but they estimate that there were hundreds of thousands of people who died from this, most of which were women, some of which were children. But this brings us then to 1692 and the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts. 150 people are arrested during this time or imprisoned, and at least 24 of them were killed and or died from being imprisoned.
And points to the colonies, points to the New World for establishing at least a somewhat formal court for it.
I mean, they were local magistrates and stuff,
they managed to put a lot of spit polish on a terrible, terrible act.
And it supposedly started with a couple of girls doing an ancient sort of scrying technique with a makeshift crystal ball where they had a glass of water and they broke an egg and dropped it inside there, and then they were supposed to see like who they were going to marry, or,
right?
Who's going to.
It's like those foldy paper four corners things. Like that's literally what they were doing.
And
6 months later, 24 people are dead.
Exactly. And one of the girls apparently saw a coffin in there and like broke down in hysterics and it just exploded from there. Now that's how the story goes. But it stopped finally when the governor's wife was accused of witchcraft, and then they put the kibosh on that pretty quick.
Yeah.
There's a thought that the Salem witch trials may have been a political ploy too, because there was one family in particular who was accusing much of another family of witchcraft, and it was pretty one-sided in a way.
And I'm sure that's how 9 out of 10 of these things, these towns that lose their minds, this is not even a question of religious belief. It's a political weapon.
Yeah,
it is a very easy. And you don't have to do much to prove anything because you can just say it. Right. And the first person to claim witchcraft wins. It's as simple. It's just a gun sitting on a table, and the first person to point it and pull the trigger gets to walk out of the room.
Yep, and that's how it happened. Now, with the advent of science, witchcraft and the hysterics, about it.
Yeah.
Really started severely lessening. It got much better once people were able to explain things, and the fear that people felt could start being alleviated, and then witches weren't so fearful, although, still the idea of the witch persisted. Mm-hmm. But you didn't have the convenient excuse of somebody put a curse on our crops, so let's go out and burn them at the stake.
Right. That's where a separation of church and state comes in really handy. That right there, when the people who are in charge of the burning stakes and the people who are in charge of finding people to burn are not the same entity.
I didn't mention this, but I'm so certain that you guys can draw the parallel between burning at the stake and the title "The Burning Times." I'm not even going to mention it.
Yeah.
Not even you didn't even hear that.
Nope.
So science helps out a lot, and the whole witch hunt epidemic dies out finally. But as we mentioned earlier, witch hunts are still carried out today. Especially India, I read, is pretty bad for parading accused witches in the street naked and killing them. And
Sub-Saharan Africa, huge amount of accusations. If the end results weren't so terrifying, they would be hilarious stories of men claiming spontaneous penis theft.
Oh, I think I've heard this.
Where, a guy will just hysterically decide his penis is gone and blame a witch. And that witch is killed, and then he's like, oh, it's back. You say how, but I mean, you have to, it's in a lot of parts of the world, the belief systems rule everything. It's a difficult thing.
Well.
And even here in our lofty perch in the United States, no one calls them witch hunts because we know that those aren't real anymore. But instead, we'll say, "Oh, well, that heavy metal, if you play it backwards, you're going to get like." There's still that creature's still alive in Western culture, even though we've put the brakes on people getting killed from it for the most part, but it still happens in abusive homes.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and it's kind of like that, just the relabeling of stuff, and then they can kind of get away with it. It's not called a witch hunt anymore. It's called liberating America from the terrorists, and whatever label you want to put on it. They get away with it.
The government of I believe it was Thailand. So let's just say a government.
Okay.
Recently released a book on how to spot the gay kids in elementary school, so that they can be quickly located and removed before they, and that's
infect
right,
others.
And that's no different. Now you've got here's a list of things you have to look out for because these kids are witches. It's absolutely no different.
Right, and it all boils down to blatant ignorance.
Right. If you can focus fear, you get to consolidate your power, and people will play that card through the history until we're finally all robots.
And that's coming soon.
Hopefully.
That singularity is right on the horizon. But
Blurry Photos now available completely in binary.
So 10110010.
00110.
Program laugh. Does witchcraft exist today in any way, shape, or form? Yes, it does. And this is what we mentioned earlier with Wicca. Modern day pagan religion that it's a nature worshipping religion, and the divine feminine and divine masculine.
Yeah, I've already gone on the record in this podcast of being very pro old timey witch and very against new timey witches.
You don't like the Wicca?
No.
Okay.
No, I do not. It's like saying, you don't like hard metal, but imagine in new hard metal it's just a tambourine, and the old hard metal had all the guitars. Like, Wicca lost all the guitars, and they just kept the damn tambourine, man.
Well,
is that vague enough?
No, that's pretty. I mean, if you had said a band name, maybe. But,
just throwing anybody a line there. No, I just no.
I'll tell you what. I appreciate how they appreciate nature and the forces of doing good and not worrying about material things, I think.
Well, I mean, one thing that I was actually very surprised about. No, before doing the research, my understanding of modern Wicca, that these people were just carrying the torch from previous pagan beliefs, and this is just like these people are keeping alive a very old belief system. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case. The Wicca is barely older than Scientology.
I mean,
it's like 15, 20 years older than the Scientologists.
Yeah, it was the 50s or 60s that they really started crystallizing what Wicca was.
Absolutely. And I mean, and the farthest back they can go is the late 20s. I mean, this is a 20th century belief system, and it is just, you kind of cobble together the things you like from other,
from the classical pagan.
Right, people.
Stuff.
Yeah, they use the pentagram, or the pentacle as they call it.
Represents earth, air, fire, water, and spirit.
See, and then when you put all the points together, you get your Captain Planet.
Right.
But it is a semi-manufactured belief system for people who already wanted to believe in something like that, which is fine. The one credit I was giving the Wiccans is that they had this ancient pedigree, this lineage, and I was really astounded to learn that it is a newer construct.
Did you see what the creed or basically the main thought behind Wicca?
Do no harm. You know what? I've actually even seen, hearkening back to our discussions of Mr. Aleister Crowley.
Yep.
Which is do what you will, harm none.
Yeah.
I saw coming up, and
do what you will, but harm none.
Yeah.
So that's pretty fun, huh?
We're getting self-referential.
Yeah.
That means we've arrived, brother.
We have enough out there that
yeah.
we can start. The Marilyn Goatman.
Watch this. Now, if you'd like to hear more about Aleister Crowley, please check out episode 001 in our series and block out a lot of time. Because we like to talk about him.
Yeah, we've hopefully gotten better about the editing of our ramblings, but But yeah, Crowley had a big influence on there. I also like for their Sabbats they use the wheel of the year, which is it's basically a cycle of Earth seasons, and I think there's maybe 8 of these, and a couple of them you might be familiar with. Samhain is one.
Yep.
Midsummer is one.
Do they go with Samhain or Samhain?
They go with Samhain.
Okay.
As we referenced in the history of
oh man, we were so good at this.
And another one that I thought was cool, Yule is one of the times of year.
Yeah.
That they like to celebrate and gather on.
Not that I have a log in the way you think I do. I mean, I don't have a log.
No, nobody has a log.
There's a little Clark W. Griswold there for you. We'll save it for Christmas. It's fine.
But we still call it the Yuletide.
Yeah.
And Yule log and all this stuff. It's the time of the year. It's like saying the summer solstice or winter solstice, things like that.
And that is the last one that's going to sound familiar.
Yeah, everything else is kind of like...
That's where the wheels fall off the wagon for you. But we're going to tell you the rest of them.
But yeah, I mean, that's Wicca. It's a recognized religion today. And quite a few people celebrate that.
Interestingly enough, they just recently, in the last year, a Wiccan military won the right to have the pentacle on headstones in the Arlington National Cemetery.
Wow.
They've recently been awarded the right to have the pentacle on their gravestones.
Well,
you've arrived, Wicca. Scientologist, take a number. So that for you is kind of what witchcraft is about. Yeah, there's your primer. That's gonna get you through anything you need to discuss at the office.
And if you want to learn more about Mr. Matthew Hopkins or the Burning Times or any of that stuff, look it up yourself.
Yeah. Or write to us and say, I'd like another episode.
That'd be great.
That further focuses, because I cannot emphasize what a giant bucket of information witchcraft is.
Yep.
We could spend hours and hours and hours on any area of it. So if you want to hear more about it, let us know.
Yeah, we'll dive into that stuff.
Yeah, we'll douse it. We'll crack an egg into that cup and look for the coffins.
Yeah. So I think it's high time for some puns.
Oh man, I love puns. All right. What do you have for us this week, Mr.
All
Flora?
right, I'll start us out. So we're doing businesses that are witch or witchcraft themed. My first one is a bakery called Fresh from the Coven.
I like that. I like that a lot. All right, I've got one. It's a discount ritual supply store called Deal Wicket.
I get it.
Yeah.
Number 2 for me is a home furnishings store called Bed, Sabbath, and Beyond.
Oh!
Or Bed, Sabbath, and the Wand.
Oh, I like with the wand. I like the wand even more.
Thought I might have to lay the foundation there first.
I've got a product, Crackling Crone brand Bony Hand Cream, to make sure your hands are as veiny and bony as they can be. You don't have witch's hands till you have Crackling Crone hands.
We love puns.
Puns.
So, and we got one more email from a listener that's about some superstitions that were pretty cool. One of which is if someone comes in the front door of a house, you also have to leave by that door, or vice versa. You can't come in the front and leave at the back, or come in the back and leave at the front.
I do that all the time. I'm shafted.
Crazy, huh? Think of all that luck you could be getting.
Uh-huh.
If a picture falls from whence it's hung, there's going to be a death. You heard of that one?
I work at an auction house. Everyone I know is going to die. Pictures fall from walls. Never at all. I just realized I added that sometimes fine paintings fall from walls. That part has to be deleted.
Leave it in. A way to counteract the punishment of the bad stuff that happens to you when a black cat crosses your path, to have a white cat cross your path afterwards. Makes sense.
Well, I did know about that though, and that's why I keep one in a backpack.
Makes sense. Because I've been smelling something. All right,
I put a roller skate on it.
Also, this
it's a rollerblade, so it doesn't go very far.
Yonk. Yonk. This one's pretty cool. It's bad luck to hang a picture on a Sunday. Lots of stuff with pictures.
Yeah.
Don't sweep across a doorway at night. It's bad luck.
Huh.
Fun. All right.
Okay.
Oh, I think the listener says I think it's something about spirits getting in.
How do people get anything done?
I know.
And how do they ever hang a picture?
I don't know. Anything in the home is bad luck, I think.
It is a veritable minefield of superstitious torment.
Tread carefully, lest you let bad spirits in.
You think we've let enough bad spirits in tonight? You think we've...
Thank you for sending us an email. Please send us a pun. You guys, we left the witch pun door wide open.
Yeah. You just come on in, root through the cellar, see what you find.
Don't touch the mandrake root.
Nope. That thing screams. Harry Potter, thank you!
Harry Potter! And we're out!
Harry Potter!
Harry Potter! Harry Potter!
More Foley work.
That's probably coming through as like... Yeah,
that might come out to be a real bad idea, my Foley work of smacking the table.
Right next to the mic. Yeah, that's what we got for you for this episode. And next episode is going to be our Halloween episode.
Oh man, I hope that you are prepared yourself. And if you haven't, start now. It's going to take time. We're
gonna tell you some spooky stories. It's not gonna be too informational, but it should be a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, we are warning you now. You cannot sue us for lack of sleep, nausea, epilepsy, narcolepsy,
making fun of you,
kleptometsy. Made that one up. What's kleptometsy? You steal the Mets?
Stealing sleep?
I don't know.
Kleptomancy?
Kleptomancy.
You raise sleep from the dead?
I don't know. But you can't blame us for anything that happens to you for listening to us.
That's right. Now or then.
Yep.
Before this or in days to come.
You've been warned.
Thunder sound. We probably need to find a new sound effect. That one might get old soon.
Horse of Terror!
So we'd like to plug a podcast of a friend of ours.
Yeah, speaking of the paranormal.
There's a podcast called An Hour with Your Ex. That is a podcast from our friend Mel Evans and Mark Colum. And what they do is one of them will give the other one a movie that the first person has seen and likes, or maybe doesn't like. But
you've been there. You've got one of your favorite movies, and it's time to make someone watch it.
Right, and the second person either hasn't seen it or hasn't seen it in a long time, and so they kind of are like, here, you watch it this week. We'll watch one of your choosing next week, and then they take it apart, they dissect it, talk about it. And hilarity ensues.
Absolutely. And it's such an egalitarian system, one wonders how they ever broke up. I mean, if they can achieve this kind of cooperation.
What can't be done?
So if you've ever wondered what it's like to spend time with your ex...
and talk about movies.
Yeah. I love it. I'm a big fan, and I think it's a great podcast.
Yeah. I think the last week's episode was An American Werewolf in London. They actually took that one apart and talked about it. But, it's a good time. An Hour with Your Ex. Check it out on the iTunes, or just Google it in there, and you'll find it. Oh, by the way, you guys, go to blurryphotos.org. Look at all the cool stuff that's on there. It's not much, it's just the podcast right now and some pictures.
And if you're trying to explain to people how cool it is, make sure to point out, it's .org. They don't just hand those out. Okay? You got to earn that.
Also, if you're going to talk to other people about Blurry Photos, tell them to like our Facebook page and follow us on the Twitters. Listen to the podcast. We're on iTunes. You might be listening through iTunes right now.
Ever heard of it?
Yeah. So, if you like what we do and can get this far in each episode, give us a good rating. Why not?
Do it.
Comment on there. Be like, these guys are nuts. And it's great.
And there are so few. Again, this is your chance for immortality. You want to have your review on iTunes? If you download a Black Keys album, and you're like, my review will never get read. There's so many here. This is your chance.
This is it. Do it now.
Yep.
And tell everyone else to. Oh, don't tell them not to do it, but tell everybody else to do it, and then you can be like, I remember the day when people could read my review.
Exactly. You get cred in the community.
So that's our plug for ourselves. This has been Blurry Photos. I am David Flora.
And I am also David Flora. I was just kidding. I'm Dave Stecco.
Shapeshifter.
Doppelganger. Good night. Good day.
Bye!